You wake up at 6:04, not 6 o'clock. Never exactly on the hour. Your body just does this now. The coffee maker is 11 years old. It sputters before it pours. You've thought about replacing it maybe 40 times. You never do. You could buy the factory that makes it. You could buy the company that owns the factory, the one that owns the mine that pulls the ore for the wiring. Instead, you stand here, waiting, listening to it cough out 4 cups of average coffee. There's a castle in Scotland you looked at once. Late night, half serious. 9 bedrooms. A moat, technically, though the listing called it a water feature. You close the tab. You like this kitchen. The light comes in at 6:20 and lands exactly on the counter, exactly where you set your mug. Every single morning. Like it was built for you, though you know that's not true. You just happened to notice it once and never stopped noticing it since. That's worth more to you than 9 bedrooms. Nobody would believe that. So you don't tell them. You sit at a table that came from a thrift store in 2003. There's a water ring on the corner from a glass you set down wrong years ago, before any of this. Before the first check with too many zeros landed in an account you almost didn't believe was real. You never sanded it out. It reminds you of the version of you that didn't know yet, the one who's still worried about the electric bill. Some mornings you miss him. The toast pops. Ordinary sound, metal spring, dull thud. You butter it slowly, not because you're savoring it, because there's nowhere else you need to be, and you've learned the hard way that most people spend their whole lives racing toward mornings exactly like this one. You're already here. You just don't tell anyone that either. You didn't build this with an app. No pitch deck. No stage. No ticker symbol with your name buried 3 shell layers deep in the filings. You bought a self-storage lot in 2009. Nobody wanted it. The economy was on its knees, and this lot had weeds growing up through cracked asphalt, a busted gate that hadn't locked right in years. You paid cash. Wired from an account with a name on it that meant nothing to anyone. Then a laundromat, then another. Then a third, on a street where the bus stop bench had a cigarette burn shaped like a comma. Then a trailer park outside a town most people couldn't find on a map. 41 lots. 41 families paying rent to a name they'd never once heard, care of a management company that existed on paper and nowhere else. Boring things, overlooked things, things people drive past without seeing, things nobody photographs for a magazine. Nobody's ever done a documentary about a man who owns 41 square feet of gravel under a double wide in a town with 1 stoplight. You didn't chase the shiny thing, you chased the dirt underneath it. The land, the pipes, the unglamorous bones of a place that people need whether the market's up or the market's down. Recessions don't stop people from needing somewhere to do their laundry. Recessions don't stop people from needing a place to store what's left after the divorce, after the funeral, after the eviction. You learned early, rent from necessity, not desire. Desire is fickle. Desire chases trends. Necessity just pays quietly, every first of the month forever. Nobody envies a laundromat. That's exactly why you own 6 of them. The empire has no logo, no headquarters, no name that shows up when you search it. It's an LLC folded inside another LLC filed in a state you've never visited, managed by an accountant who calls you sir, and has never once asked where the money actually goes at night. You built something enormous by making sure it never once looked like anything at all. $150 million. You've never said the number out loud. Not to a friend, not to a lover, not to the mirror, not really, not in a way that felt like it counted. It sits in the walls of buildings that smell like fabric softener and rust. It sits in the ground under gravel lots and chain-link fences. It sits quiet, the way you like it. Money like this, kept loud, changes how people look at you. Money like this, kept silent, changes nothing at all. You chose nothing. Dale's been cutting your hair for 6 years. He doesn't know your last name is on the deed for the building 2 doors down. The one with the "for lease" sign that's been up so long, it started to yellow. You own that building. Business is rough, Dale says, running the clippers up the back of your neck. Rent's killing everybody on this strip. Yeah, you say. Heard that. You could tell him, right now. You could tell him you own the building he's terrified of losing his shop to when the lease renews. You could tell him you'd never raise his rent, that you've actually kept it flat for 4 years running, quietly, through the management company, because you like the sound of his scissors from the sidewalk when you walk by on a Tuesday. You don't tell him. You doing all right? Dale asks. Not really asking. The kind of question people ask while they're thinking about something else. Getting by, you say. 2 words, easy to say, easier to believe once you've said it enough times. Dale nods like he understands completely. Like you're the same as him. 2 guys getting by in a town that doesn't owe either of you anything. There's a peace in that. A real one. Not the fake peace of being admired. The quiet peace of being unremarkable. Nobody performs for a man who thinks you're just getting by. Nobody asks you for anything either. Not a loan, not advice, not a piece of something. You've watched what money does to rooms, how it changes the temperature the second someone finds out. Eyes recalculate. Voices soften in a way that isn't kindness, it's strategy. You've seen it happen to other men. Good men turned into walking accounts the moment the number got out. You let Dale finish the cut. You tip him well. Not obviously well, just a little more than expected, folded so he won't count it in front of you. See you in a few weeks, Dale says. Yeah, you say. See you. You walk out into the cold with a fresh haircut and a secret so large it could buy the whole block, and nobody on that sidewalk knows it. Not one person. There's a loneliness in that. You've made peace with the loneliness, most days. There was a Tuesday, maybe 2 years back. You'd gone in for an oil change on the old truck. The same truck you've had since before any of it started. The one with a duct-taped visor and a check engine light that's been on so long you've started to think of it as decoration. While you waited, you wandered the showroom next door. The car was $340,000. You could have bought it in cash without checking a balance. You could have bought 3 of them and not felt it, the way most people don't feel $3 leave their pocket. A salesman approached. Young, nervous, sized you up in half a second. Flannel, work boots, a truck outside with 190,000 miles on it, and decided correctly by every visible metric that you weren't a buyer. Just looking, you told him, before he could say a word. He nodded, relieved, and drifted toward someone else. Someone in a blazer. You stood there a long moment. There was a version of that afternoon where you bought it. Where you signed the paperwork slow, let the nervous kid's face change in real time. Watch the moment his whole understanding of you collapsed and rebuilt itself. There's a specific kind of hunger in wanting that. Wanting to be seen. Wanting just once to let the mask slip and watch a room recalibrate around what you actually are. You wanted it. You won't pretend you didn't. But you thought about what happens after. The calls that start coming. The favors people ask once they know. The way old friends start doing math in their heads every time you're in the room. What would it cost him? What would it cost him? What would it cost him? The way a car like that isn't a car anymore. It's an announcement, and announcements can't be taken back. You thought about your kitchen, the light at 6:20. You walked out of the dealership without saying goodbye to the salesman. Drove the old truck home with the check engine light glowing dim orange the whole way, and you didn't feel like you'd lost anything. That's the part nobody understands about money like this. The hardest purchases aren't the ones you make. They're the ones you don't. There was another moment. Smaller. Quieter. The kind that doesn't make for a good story, but sits with you longer than the car ever did. An old friend, someone from before, someone who knew you when you were splitting rent 4 ways in a house with a broken furnace. Got laid off. Told the story at a cookout, half laughing the way people do when they're trying not to cry in front of others. Talked about maybe losing the house. Talked about what he'd say to his kids. You almost told him. Right there, beer sweating in your hand, you almost said I could fix this in an afternoon. I could fix this with a phone call. You didn't. Instead, you offered to help him look for work. Sent him 2 job postings the next morning from an email that looked like it belonged to someone with nothing to spare. Later, quietly, through a channel he'd never trace, his mortgage got paid down through a clerical error at the bank that took 11 months and 4 lawyers to arrange and looked, to him, like pure luck. He still thinks it was luck. You let him think that. It cost you more effort than just handing him a check. It always does. Silence is expensive in ways money never is. But you'd rather buy his dignity than his gratitude. You come home most nights to an empty house. That part isn't about the money. Or maybe it is. Maybe it's hard to let someone all the way in when a piece of you has to stay locked. Permanently behind a door you can never quite open. You've dated. You've loved once, maybe twice. But there's always a version of yourself you're withholding. A file you keep sealed. Eventually people feel that, even if they can't name it. Eventually they leave, or you let them. That's the cost. Nobody talks about that part in the fantasy. You sit at the same table, the one with the water ring. You think about the number sometimes, late when the house is too quiet. $150 million. It doesn't make the ceiling look any different. It doesn't make the refrigerator hum any softer. It doesn't make the quiet in this house feel less like quiet. What it does, the only thing it really does, is remove the noise. The noise of worry. The noise of what if the transmission goes, of what if I get sick, of what if I lose this job and the next one doesn't come. That noise is gone. Has been gone for years now. You almost forget what it sounded like. And in its place is just this. A Tuesday. Plain, unremarkable, entirely yours. You used to think money would make a Tuesday feel like something. Feel bigger. Feel like it mattered more than the Tuesdays before it. It doesn't. It just buys you the right to let a Tuesday be exactly what a Tuesday is. No performance. No proving. No eyes on you, recalculating. Just the hum of the fridge, and the light doing what the light does, and nobody in the entire world knowing that the man drinking bad coffee at a thrift store table could, if he wanted, buy the block. The building. The whole street twice over. Nobody knows. That was always the point.